Hello, and a very good morning to all of you present here. I, Dr. Purvi Shah, Assistant Professor, BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, welcome everyone in today's webinar. Today, we are having a session on a very important phase in a woman's life, that is postpartum period. This phase requires focus and energy during the coming weeks and months on baby, but the mother also requires an equivalent care and recovery to happen. No matter what is the mode of delivery, the first 6 weeks postpartum are considered the very important period for a woman to recover well. So let's see how we can help a mother in her postpartum period to recover, restore, and rebuild her health back to normal. For the same, we have here today Dr. Khushbu Thakkar, MPT in Obs and Gynec, who by profession is a clinical physiotherapist running her private clinic named Sakhi Women's Health Physiotherapy Center at Surat. Earlier, she has worked at a private gynec hospital for around 4 years. She is working mainly in the field of women's health since last 10 years. To add, she is also a certified fitness trainer and a mat Pilates instructor, specially for antenatal and postnatal population. We are privileged to have you here, ma'am. On behalf of BITS fraternity, I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you
So,
so much.
without much delay, we will begin today's webinar. But before that, I request all the participants to kindly cooperate with us by keeping your microphones and cameras off during the whole session until asked for the smooth continuity of this session. We will be running a live session of the whole webinar and it will be published soon on our YouTube channel. So if you missed something, don't worry, you can catch it up later on. The question and answer session will be conducted after the main session, and so at that time you can type your questions in the text box. So without much delay, let's begin today's webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Purvi. And thank you so much to the Institute for asking me to present a very beautiful topic which is normally ignored. I mean, we normally talk about antenatal population a lot and labor, but postpartum body is one thing which is normally not covered. So today, as Purvi has already introduced me, I'm Dr. Khushbu Thakkar and I have done my specialty in Obs and Gynae from Chennai. So we are
Ma'am,
going
sorry
to
to interrupt you. Ma'am, just can you adjust your camera because we can't see you. Uh, yes, ma'am, that's fine.
just wait 1 minute. Is this okay?
Yes, ma'am, that's fine. Better, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, starting with the postpartum body, and the topic is recover, restore, and rebuild. In today's world or in today's generation, like postpartum women, we are as such influenced a lot by social media. So we want to get back to routine very quickly. But with any other major event, physical event in life, we have to give our body a little bit of time to recover and restore before we start jumping into any conclusions or before we start any kind of treatment or any kind of fitness regime, just having a look on the YouTube or anything of that sort. We need to first check our own body whether our body has completely recovered and whether it is the right time to start or not. So this has been one of the, it is considered to be the fourth trimester, or normally we talk about the first 9 months, that is when the baby is inside and the delivery, and how the delivery can be, optimized or how it can be made more smoother. But the postpartum period, which is like another 3 months at least that we consider, where the body is getting back to its normal state, where the structures which were stretched or which are a little bit lax, they come back to the routine position. The uterus which was stretched up to the, it is still the ZP sternum at the end of 37th week, it is involuting. Everything takes time, plus the hormones are taking its time to come back to its normal level. So this is the fourth trimester and it is an extremely important period in a woman's life. So normally when we are talking about childbearing, it is normally the childbearing year. It's just not the 9 months. The 12 months are considered to be the most important period in a woman's life. So After the baby is born, most of the women are more concerned about handling the baby or feeding the baby. And in this entire process, taking care of her own self and what all things that she should be expecting or what all things can go wrong with her in the postpartum, in the immediate postpartum period is ignored. So as a women's health physiotherapist, if your patient is coming to you antenatally, it is your duty and it is your responsibility to explain it to her that what all things that she will be facing in immediate postpartum period and there is cure and treatment for it. I will be talking about this when we talk about the postnatal issues. So today's webinar is basically about the hospital-based protocols and a little bit more about how the body is going to respond immediately postnatally or the postpartum in the postnatal period, the postpartum period. So what exactly is the postpartum period? It is the period which begins immediately after childbirth, and here the hormones are coming back, the uterus is coming back to the normal state, it is returning to the non-pregnant state. Okay. So according to the WHO or according to the medical definition, it is also called as the puerperium. It is the first 6 to 8 weeks following your childbirth. It is the recovery stage. It has to recover. Like as I already mentioned, like any other physical event in life, if a woman or if any person for that matter, if he or she goes and runs a marathon, you do not expect him or her to run a marathon the very next day, right? So something similar has happened to your body when you deliver a 3 or 3.5 kg baby from that vagina. So what happens exactly is that the structures are stretched. The hormones are just, facilitating the delivery. So it is like running a marathon or climbing an uphill. So when you come out of it, it is necessary that you give your body the right amount of time to recover. Okay, so this is the recovery phase and it has to go slowly and gradually. So do not rush up into things that I have to start with this, I have to start with this. We need to have a nice detailed look on the female's objective and the subjective assessment before we start with any kind of treatment or intervention with her in the postpartum period. So as you can see, there is a small pictorial representation of what all things happen in a female's body. This is just a very brief presentation. And if you can see, the first picture is the sagging abdomen. Then in the second picture, she is just holding on to her perineum so that she does not leak. And there is a lot of weight gain, obviously 12 to 15 kgs. To some women, they also gain approximately 20-25 kg. There will be stretch marks, there will be breast changes, there will be loss of hair, not to forget about the mental disorders that she might be facing. There can be depression, postpartum maternity blues, lack of sleep, fatigue, perineal pain, and several n number area of events that will be happening to the body. As a women's health physiotherapist, what we need to understand over here that you have to treat the body as a whole. So when a women's health physiotherapist is called into picture, normally we have this mental link that it is the pelvic floor or it is the core that we are going to talk about. Obviously, the core is extremely important, but we need to have a little bit more food of thought when it comes to core, that how your core is affected by the rest of the body. Obviously, your core, that is the inner core, we'll be talking about that again, is an extremely important part, and which is what is disrupted or which is what is vulnerable post your delivery, is definitely the first line of treatment when it comes to your postpartum body. But as we all know, that pain is a very subjective thing, and there are a lot of factors involved when it comes to pain. So if we are talking about perineal pain for matter, or we are talking about low backache, or any pain, it is depending, it is a subjective thing, and we have to decide that where exactly this pain is coming from, and we need to have a multifactorial and a holistic approach rather than just seeing the site of pain. Okay. So recovery. I have divided this recovery period into the immediate postpartum period when the woman is going to be in the hospital, and the puerperium, that when the woman is discharged from the hospital and she's at home and she will be called for a follow-up by the OBGYN at approximately 6 to 8 weeks, and before that if the need arises. Alright. And obviously there is a later postpartum period which is a different topic altogether. Hospital based, this is the time where the women's health physiotherapist has a very, very crucial role. So if it is a normal vaginal delivery with or without assistance, or if it is a C-section, the hospitals say obviously it is different for different hospitals, but normally in most of the metro cities it is approximately 48 hours if it is without any assistance. Without any assistance means without a forceps or without a vacuum. So that is a without any assistance normal vaginal delivery. If it is a normal vaginal delivery with assistance, plus if it is a C-section, then it has to be usually 72 hours or maybe little less than 72 hours. So this is the time where we have our say, and we need to go and visit the woman over here and teach her a lot of things. So what is your role of as a physiotherapist in the hospital setup? I have divided again it into two parts. That is a general thing that is given to all the patients, whether it is a normal delivery or whether it is a C-section, whether it is normal without assistance or whether it is normal with assistance. So the thing that you need to do once you walk into the patient's room and you are seeing the postpartum woman lying on her bed, as a therapist, you need to have a lot of confidence and you need to go with all entire knowledge about the postpartum body and then have a look at her file. Also do your postnatal assessment and then you start with any kind of treatment. The general principles will be followed for most of the patients unless and until it is contraindicated in few of them depending upon the situation. So that has to be done accordingly. Otherwise, we have to reassure and give advice regarding her posture, regarding her breastfeeding positions, regarding her ergonomic care, and there are pictures about it that I have mentioned. Exercises in general will be focusing mainly which is promoting her recovery time and which is also going to heal her body. Okay, so there will be stability exercises, there will be stability, then you have to little bit load the body, so stability with mobility, and exercises which are promoting circulation because there might be a lot of edema in the body. It can be perineal edema, it can be edema that is swelling in her limbs or whatever. So if that is the concern, then you have to treat accordingly and give exercises. So that's a general protocol specific to the patient. It is highly individual and it depends upon several factors. As I told you that before you enter into your patient's bedroom, you need to know that what was the mode of delivery, what is a parity level, that is which delivery is this, how many live babies has she produced, or whether it's the GPLA, right, the gravida, parity, live babies and abortion. So we need to know what is that, what is the age of the woman, any associated pregnancy related dysfunctions she is having, so that if that is there might be a carry forward of those dysfunctions in the postpartum period. What is her BMI levels? If she is overweight, she might be having some problems in transfers or maybe loading her body. So these are the things that is there in our mind, so that once we make a protocol after visiting her, after taking our own assessment, it becomes better for us to make a protocol and plan an intervention for her. And obviously she will be having certain specific areas of concern, so it is a specific to the patient, so it has to be very individualized and it has to be customized for that patient. For that particular patient, it cannot be same for everyone. Depending on the patient, we have to treat her. Depending on her concern, we need to treat her. So the first thing is that whenever you are going in as a therapist, we need to teach her transfers. Even if it is a C-section or a normal delivery, we know that we need to teach her bed transfer. Especially if it is a C-section, obviously getting up straight, so that is from supine lying to just get up straight into the bed is going to be difficult. And we do not want her to prop up the bed every time when she wants to get up. She needs to learn this because after 2 or 3 days, she is going to go back to her home and she also has to take care of her own child. So this is the beauty of the postpartum period. It's not just herself that she has to take care of, but it is also the baby that she has to take care of. So we have to see to it that the woman has, a clear understanding of all these principles, of all the transfers before she leaves the hospital. And trust me, these are very, very important advices which are normally not given to the postpartum women immediately, and that can result into some or the other issues later on. And I will tell you the reason why. So as you can see, you have to ask the patient to turn onto one side. Over here, the only thing missing is a pillow between the legs. I would still suggest that let her, put a pillow between her thighs, squeeze the pillow between the legs, and make use of your body with your hands, and you roll the body as a log roll, not like first your legs and then the trunk. The entire body rolls on together. Okay, so that the SI joint is, there is a little bit of form closure which is available at the SI joint, and the load transfer is easy for the woman. Then when she's getting up, if she has to use her hands to, maybe lift her body up into the sitting position. So the bottom hand's elbow is to be utilized, and so you can see in the first picture, the bottom hand's elbow is placed onto the mat, and she has to squeeze that elbow down and use the top hand's hand so that she can squeeze the body up into the upright position. Ask her to stay in that position for like maybe a few seconds. Otherwise, there are people who might have a little bit of drop in the blood pressure immediately, especially if it is a C-section. And then after she comes into the sitting position, you have to also teach her how to stand. Alright, so we have to teach her that she has to take the entire weight into the forefoot. She has to squeeze those glutes, keep her SI joint, keep her maybe a little bit of perineal lift. And then if there is, sorry, there was a problem. And if there is any pain or discomfort, you have to address it here itself according to the patient's need. I hope you all are clear. We go forward. So this was about transferring in the bed, in and out of the bed. Okay, so when she's going into the bed, you have to reverse the entire process. She has to slowly sit, then maybe she has to go into side lying, and then slowly if she wants to roll back to supine position, she can use a pillow between her legs, squeeze those pillows between her like a static adductor, and then roll her entire body like a log, not one by one. So another advice that we will be giving her post cesarean and post normal delivery is splinted coughing. Again, a very, very, very important advice that has to be given to any postpartum woman because this is normally not given in the hospital setup. And we as a therapist, if we are seeing that patient, it is mandatory that this has to be told. So as you can see, she is using a pillow. She's hugging the pillow, and whenever she feels that she's about to cough or sneeze, she has to hold the pillow tightly. She has to hold the pillow tightly against her suture line. Yeah, and then only she needs to cough and sneeze. Okay, so that the pressure, the intra-abdominal pressure which is throwing the sutures out is not going to cause her any discomfort, and she will also gain more confidence because of this splinted technique. Yeah. And there's one more thing which will be taught over here is when I will be talking about the pelvic floor muscle exercises, I'll be talking about that. That is called as the NACK. It is KNACK. Again, a very, very crucial thing that has to be taught. After the splinted coughing for CS, if it is a normal vaginal delivery, it will be the suture line. If it is an episiotomy, as we all know, it is a cut that is placed into the perineum and to facilitate the delivery into the second stage of labor. I assume that all of us might be doing this. So if she's had a normal vaginal delivery and if she feels like coughing or sneezing, we have to ask her to maybe cross her legs, cross her legs and then maybe do a super augmented Kegels exercise or squeeze that pelvic floor muscle just before the cough and the sneeze. We'll be talking about this again when we talk about the pelvic floor muscle exercise. So this is going to help her protect the pelvic floor when there is a rise in the intra-abdominal pressure, and it's going to give the perineum a little bit of descent. So when the pelvic floor muscle is talked, I'll talk about the function, and that is where we'll be explaining you why this is done. So this is a general advice that is given to each and every woman. Okay, now the breastfeeding positions. Unfortunately, in smaller cities, we do not have a lactation consultant. If we are not having a lactation consultant in our hospital setup, the physiotherapist can do, you can fill in over here. You need to teach the woman different positions to feed the baby. And we will be getting information about this, everywhere. We have booklets, and we know a lot about posture, right? So how your posture is going to affect your pelvic floor, and how we can work preventatively in those first 2 days so that we do not develop any back pain or stress urinary incontinence or pelvic organ prolapse can also be determined if a good advice has been given to the woman in those first 2 to 3 days, and obviously if she follows the instructions. If you can see the picture, there is a woman who is lying in the side lying position. There is a pillow and she is feeding. Again, there can be a pillow between her legs, which I recommend, so that there is a good form closure at the sacroiliac joint. And whenever she is going to change the positions in the bed, there is a feedback, there is a visual feedback that she has to squeeze the pillow and change the body as a whole, and that's a log roll. If she's going to sit, which is the ideal position, which has to be recommended to each and every woman, that you need to sit and feed the baby. Ask her not to slouch her back. Use multiple pillows. There are feeding pillows also available. important part over here is that whenever she is sitting, ask her to put her legs on a stool so that they are not hanging down. Ask her to do a little bit of ankle to movements in between the feet and put a pillow, nice pillow behind her back, a vertical pillow, a horizontal pillow into her lap. Ask the patient to put the baby onto the pillow and bring the baby up rather than she bending forward to feed the baby. Alright, so this is what has to be taken care of. There should be lots and lots of pillows. See to it that her comfort is maintained, and only then we have to see how she's feeding the baby, see what is the position of the baby, see what is the position of the mother, and we have to act on that particular area if there is a concern. Right? And there will be multiple kind of patient presentations over here. There will be people who will be having neck pain, there will be people who will be having lower back ache, SI joint pain, or a coccygemia, whose treatment I have mentioned in the later slides. But this is the general advice. If we are lucky, if the patient is not having any complaint, if she is not given these advices, definitely she will come to us 6 weeks postpartum with some or the other kind of back pain, or some or the other kind of stress urinary incontinence, or prolapse or sexual dysfunction. So this is our area of concern. Then we have to teach how to handle the baby. If you can see the first picture, right? In this, the baby, the entire spinal alignment is taken a toss, and you have to teach her how the pelvis and the rib cage, they have to be stacked on one another. I'm going to teach you how that has to be taught to the patient, because it sounds very easy, but when you really have to teach that patient how it has to be done, it is quite difficult, because even teaching tilting to patient is difficult in the antenatal population, especially. They are not aware about their own bodies. So let's just bring a little bit of awareness in the antenatal population so it becomes easier for us in the postnatal period. So once she is going home, you need to tell her that if she's carrying the baby, if she's going to use those slings to carry the baby, how they should be attached. If she's using a pram, how she's going to walk. If she's going to use a stroller, if she's going to change the nappy, what should be the height. Does she have to bend forward and do it? Does she have to keep the baby at a higher level? If she's going to use those jhulas, then if putting in the baby, putting in and putting, taking the baby out, how it has to be done. The entire procedure has to be taught to the woman. We cannot assume that she might be knowing it. And the important thing over here is that she will forget, because the baby care or the baby handling or the baby feed is given the first priority to a woman, as compared to her own health in the postpartum period. So antenatally, we need to constantly remind them that postnatally, these are things you need to take care of so that we do not end up into any kind of poor posture, or we do not end up into any kind of poor posture driven musculoskeletal injuries. Yeah. So this is what we need to teach them. So these are simple, very basic advices, but they make a lot of difference, and these are all preventative measures so that we do not develop any discomforts. We need to also talk about the defecation, that is the positioning, that's the effective technique of defecation. Because defecation, the muscles that are involved in defecation are your pelvic floor muscle, the external internal anal sphincter, the pubic talus. There might be a lot of discomfort for the woman, or there might be a lot of hesitation, might be because of pain, there might be some or the other issue she might be facing, especially postnatally. So we need to give that reassurance that it's okay, you are not going to break your stitches when you are going to pass stool. And we also need to teach her how she can hold on to the sutures, and then maybe she can defecate. If she's constipated, we need to give her a good dietary advice. I mean, the dietitian will be giving a good dietary advice to her. You feel that there is the abdominal muscle are completely lax, there is a lot of separation in the recti muscle, then also she might develop constipation problems. Or if there is fecal incontinence, also we need to cater those things and deal with it accordingly. So in this, if you can see, the most common and the basic advice, which is a general advice, again, these are not specific concerns. The general advice which is given to each and every postnatal woman is that she has to maintain the spinal curve. If she wants to, she can use a stool, and just do not, put in a lot of pressure and not slouch her back, so that the anorectal angle has to be in a nice alignment, but she can defecate well without any problem. So a very, very frequently asked question by most of my postpartum women: whether do I need to wear an abdominal binder or not? If you can see over here, this does not even look like a binder. So these are all very traditional concepts. These are which the Chinese people or the people there in Hong Kong, they use these kind of binders. And I especially chose this picture over here is, you can see these all are binded in a crisscross pattern. If we just go back to our anatomy of the abdominal wall, we have the internal obliques, we have the external obliques, we have the internal obliques, the recti, and the transverse abdominis, which is like a, it's placed in a circular manner. It starts from the back and they are inserting all into the median album. So the natural corset of the body is not like a straight corset. It's not as if it ऐसे ही नहीं आता है. They are crisscrossing each other, and if you know that the internal oblique splits across and in the transverse abdominis and they cross to the opposite midline, and there is a very nice pattern of your muscle fiber orientation in the abdomen. Abdominal wall is a skeletal muscle. As it is going to be lengthened, it's lengthened to quite, it's stretched to quite a extent in your pregnancy period because of the protruding abdomen or maybe because of the position of the baby is such, and that wall has to come back to its position, and these 6 weeks is the only time where this wall will come back, because again, coming back to the anatomy of the abdominal wall, these all muscles, they are all inserted at the linea alba. Linea alba is a fascia. It's a fascia. It's a very nice, collagen connective tissue networking. This fascia kind of, it just splits in the middle and it separates over here. So the loading of the body, the vertical loading of the body, where your abdominal muscle is one of the key muscle of your inner unit of your core is compromised. So when we are talking about the core, I'm going to tell you about how it is going to be compromised. I already mentioned how it is compromised and what in the postnatal women we can do so that this core gets the maximum benefit, especially in the first 6 weeks. So yes, I do suggest an abdominal binder, especially in the first 6 weeks, because here is the time where the fascia is recovering, where the abdominal muscle is trying to come back to its natural, the neutral length, and it has to have that much of time. The 6 weeks are there for a reason. Why do we not ask the woman to start going and jumping and doing multiple activities in the first 6 weeks? Because this is the recovery time, and the exercises should only be such which promotes her recovery, which promotes her healing, and not just pushed into any you know like those pelvic floor, more of a pelvic floor descent, or more it promotes urinary incontinence, nothing of that sort. It should help her to recover and heal. Yes. Now, how do you wear a binder? It is very, very important to teach the woman how the binder has to be worn. It has always to be worn from the bottom, because if you wear a very tight binder over here, I am not very much liking the way it is being binded, but if you wear a binder, it has to be it should start from the bottom, so that when it goes up, नीचे से चालू करना है, start from the bottom and then you crisscross and bring it up over here. Okay, there are lots of binders which are available in the market. There are lots of binders which are available in the market, but you have to find out which is the best for the patient, because your patient is going to ask you whether this binder is okay or not. Okay, and if she is having any SI joint pain or pubic symphysis pain, then we will concentrate more on the intertrochanteric belts. Okay, there is a belt called a Sterola belt, which is which is used internationally. But if you want to give a binder to a woman in your postpartum period, see to it that it comes from the bottom to the top, because if you go it other way around, the entire pressure is going to go on the pelvic floor, which is already weak because of the pregnancy or because of the normal vaginal delivery. Or even if it is a C-section, because of the growing uterus or because of the hormonal secretion in the body that has happened in this past 9 months, there is a laxity in the ligament. It is not going to disrupt the joint, but there is definitely a lot of laxity in the joint, and there might be some failed loading mechanism in a woman, irrespective of her mode of delivery. So binder can be suggested or should be suggested in the first 6 weeks. Now the second question which the patients ask over here is that how long, in a day, full day should I wear the binder, or should I, in between remove it? So yeah, while sleeping she does not need to wear a binder. When eating she does not need to wear a binder. She can wear a binder intermittently. In between she also needs to give some rest. And the second thing is that if there are C-section sutures, sometimes the binder kind of irritates over there at the suture line, and it might result into some issues. So maybe you should have a good woolen, good approach, I mean, or else you go and talk to your gynecologist, your team, and then you decide that whether the patient is the right person to, wear a binder or not. Ideally, there should not be an issue. If she feels that her stitches are getting, sweaty, that part is getting moist, then definitely the binder should be removed, and definitely she should not be wearing it while she is eating. It should not be extremely tight. It should be the right tensegrity. Yeah, so this is about the abdominal binder in the first 6 weeks. Before we start about the immediate postpartum problems, I normally talk about biomechanics a lot when we come to antenatal or postnatal women, because we, as physiotherapists, this is our forte and we need to know why we are doing it. It is very easy to tell you the protocols, that if there is a low backache or if there is an sacroiliac joint pain or if there is perineal tear, what are you supposed to do? Do this, do this, do this, do this. But again, each and every woman is going to be different. We need to figure out that where the problem is arising. How are you going to start with? There can be multiple areas that you want to concentrate, and where to start with, which is going to be the area which is going to cause the maximum impact on her functional activity, is the area where you need to start treating the patient. So the core is an extremely important topic, and core is basically, it has the inner core unit which we are going to talk about today, and its functions and how it is associated to the specific postnatal process. So I'm going to tell you few hypothetical situations that can happen. It is not necessary that it is going to happen to your postnatal patient, but just it can happen and how we deal with it. So that whenever we treat a patient as a whole body. The body is a machine. You cannot just treat the pelvic floor and leave the diaphragm. You cannot just treat the diaphragm and leave the back, or vice versa, or any permutation and combination, that is for that matter. You need to see the body as a holistic way. And as I already told you, a postnatal women can also have depressive or postpartum blues or psychosis. So these are also factors which are going to influence her physical body or her anatomy or her physiology. Maybe not her anatomy, but especially her physiology. So in spite of doing everything we can, still if the pain is not reducing, we need to again go back, rewind and see whether whatever strategies that we are using to help the patient, whether they are in the correct way or is there something more to it. Alright, so you need to have a very nice open view before treating a patient, rather than just learning the pelvic floor rehabilitation and grading it, maybe do an internal assessment if you know, and then go with that. If it's grade 2, then we have to start with this. Definitely, pelvic floor muscle rehabilitation is the first line of treatment in a postnatal woman, but that is not it. There can be, you might treat the patient for like weeks together and you might not see a result. This is a very practical thing that normally, because it's been 10 years of my practice into this field, I can very confidently tell you that there will be times where it is very frustrating for the therapist, especially for the patient, that in spite of doing everything that has been told, if her incontinence is not going, then maybe there is definitely more to it. So before starting with those immediate postnatal problems, I have just covered a lot of things on the core and its function. Only when we know the function of that particular area, we can understand the dysfunction of that area. Alright, and how they're integrated. It's called as the integrated system. Nothing works alone, right? I would like to give you an analogy over here is that, for example, when you're coughing or sneezing, your pelvic floor muscle has to maybe tighten a little bit so that the intra-abdominal pressure that is raised in the abdomen does not have to take the entire breath. And the muscle are just, squeezing a little bit so that the organs do not come down. So there is the two things are happening at the same time, synergistically. They have to work in synergy. When there is a dyssynergic problem over here, especially if it's the case in the postnatal women, we need to address that, and that is why I already mentioned in the general advice that we have to teach them splinted coughing, and most importantly, we need to tell them to contract the pelvic floor muscle just before she's about to cough or sneeze. Okay, we have that 1 second buffer time. So in that time, we have to teach or make the patient learn how to use the normal optimal strategies so that she does not develop it otherwise. And that mental wiring will at least take 20 to 30 days, and then it becomes a natural thing and it becomes more of a skill rather than it becomes more automatic. I would say not a skill. It becomes more automatic rather than to learn something and do it every time before you have to cough or sneeze. So let's discuss about the core and its function. So this is how your inner core looks. The most simple picture I have tried to, put it over here. If you see, at the top is your diaphragm. At the bottom is a sling shape or a hammock shaped muscle, which is the muscles of the pelvic floor. We are not discussing about the anatomy of the pelvic floor. There are superficial, there are deep muscles, and there are not a lot of muscles down there. The only thing is we do not talk much about pelvic floor. We normally talk about the back or the glorified multifidus or the abdominal muscle, because this muscle is not to be seen. And forget the physiotherapist, we are now started getting more aware about these muscles. But a woman who has just delivered, she hardly knows her pelvic floor. So as a therapist, we need to make her more aware about this muscle and what all things has to be done so that no problems arise later. Let's talk about the most important muscle over here, the pelvic floor muscle. So the muscle is like a sling. There is no, we all know how it looks like. It is the foundation or it is the floor of your core muscle. It is constantly under pressure because of the enlarging uterus, because of the body fat, and there are a lot of hormones which are released, which are going to make the ligaments of the pelvis, which are going to make the ligaments of the pelvis and also the uterus and the connecting ligaments to the other part of the pelvis a little bit more looser or more lax, so that it allows for a more natural and an optimal growth. So this is how a pelvic floor muscle looks. If you can see from a sagittal view, you see there is a sling, there is a bladder, just on the top of the bladder is the uterus. Behind the bladder is the vagina. And just behind the uterus, there is the bowel, and these are the sling of muscles. These are the hammock shaped muscles. And the two important bones, the pubic bone and the spine that they have mentioned, is basically your sacrum, and the tip at which it is connected is the coccyx. Alright, so even the coccyx position or the pubic position is going to influence this sling shaped muscle. And I have a very beautiful diagram for that in the next coming slides. This is how it is going to look in the lithotomy position if the woman is lying down with the legs spreaded. These are the group of muscles which are been mentioned. It's not necessary to memorize them, but it's always good to know the anatomy, especially if you are the one who is rehabilitating or if you are doing an internal pelvic examination. We need to know what we are feeling and whether, again, I will put, because I'm talking about this thing, I will tell you that when you are doing an internal examination, as we all know, we will see the symmetry of the contraction in the pelvic floor, which is again an important factor to designate your trachea. Sometimes you will feel that there is a lift, but there is no symmetry in both the sides of the muscles. Maybe the right side is more tighter, or the right side is contracting well, and the left side is just not giving it. So when you're putting your hands on both the sides of the walls inside the vagina, and when you feel that one side is contracting well and the other is not doing it well, definitely there is a problem, and we need to focus not only in that area, and we also need to see the alignment of the body. That I will talk about it just a minute. So yes, before, as I already said, what to know the dysfunction of a particular thing, we need to know what are the functions. So the functions of the pelvic floor muscle is somewhat, as you already saw in the slide about this. Yeah, it is supporting the vital organs. It is supporting the main vital organs of the pelvis and obviously the digestive tract above it. Okay, the digestive tract can also come out of the vagina. That's the prolapse. So when the support function of the pelvic floor is lost, it might result into prolapse. Okay, that is the first function. Second function which we are concerned over here is that it is continence. Your pelvic floor has a very important role in having a voluntary control over passing of your urine and stool. So that is continence. So when these muscles are not working well, or if there is not the right length or not the right tension in the muscle, that is definitely going to result into some kind of incontinence, that is involuntary loss of urine or stools. Sexual function, yes, because these muscles, they are very close. I mean, there's a close proximity of all these muscles, and the urethra and the vagina, everything is very nearby. Definitely, so it is going to have some or the other sexual dysfunction, especially the arousal, that is loss of libido. Because of the perineal pain, also there can be the sexual dysfunction. So when we talk about the later postnatal problems, this has to be addressed. In the initial postnatal problems, we can just talk about the pelvic floor. Then the part of your core muscle which works in synchrony with your abs and your back muscle is your diaphragm, right? The diaphragm, it is the breathing diaphragm. So this is your pelvic diaphragm and this is your breathing diaphragm. Okay? And the pelvic floor muscles are also going to support your sacroiliac joint. It is going to keep your sacroiliac joint more stable. As we know, there are ligaments like the sacrotuberous or the sacrospinous ligament. If I will show my pelvis over here, this is the ischial spine, which is attached to the sacrum by the sacrospinous ligament, and this is the ischial tuberosity, which is attached to the sacrum by the sacrotuberous ligament. Then there are sacrococcygeal ligaments. Then there is a coccygeus muscle, and a lot of muscles are attached to the sacrum and the coccyx. So definitely it has a good role in the form closure or in maintaining the stability of the pelvic joint. As we know that the pelvis has basically two sacroiliac joints and one anteriorly we have the pubic symphysis joint. Over here, in the first diagram which we saw that it is attached to the pubis and it is attached to the coccyx over here, the pelvic floor muscles. So when there is a dysfunction or when there is an anatomical disruption or when there is maybe more of tightness or more of weakness or whatever is the dysfunction, maybe there has to be some alteration in these joints. We don't know what is causing it. Maybe the joint is causing a dysfunction, or maybe the muscle is causing the dysfunction in the joint. That is what we are not aware of. So we have to formulate a protocol in such a way. I will talk about the ABC model when we talk about the treatment protocol, so that we also will talk about the alignment, we talk about the biomechanics and the control. Control is basically the neural control. Everything is, starts from your brain, right? So the pelvic floor function, as I've already mentioned, will be the support, the continence, the sexual function, and it is working as a part of a core. So it is working with your diaphragm, with your back, with your ab, synergistically, so that you have a nice mobility without any dysfunctions. This is the diagram I was talking about. If you can closely observe this diagram, if there is a diagram number 1, which is an elongated pelvic floor, and the second diagram is an approximated pelvic floor. The beauty about this diagram is it's very simple, it's very easy to understand. I have a rubber band over here so I can explain it to you how it is going to function. Sorry, I think I have kept it somewhere. It doesn't matter. You have to just imagine that there is a rubber band which is in a normal elastic, with a normal elasticity. When it is attached to your pubis and when it is attached to your coccyx, it has to have its normal tension. Or you have to imagine a hammock of a beach. Right? If you have a hammock which is extremely tight, बहुत कस के बांध दिया है दोनों end से, and if you jump onto that hammock, it will not go down. So it's something like an extremely tight pelvic floor. Okay, so you will not enjoy it. If there is a hammock which is extremely low, it's almost about to touch the floor, and if you literally, hop onto that hammock, chula, then you will also, literally descend. So something like a prolapse. It is not having that tension. So the tension in the pelvic floor muscle is important. And the tension in the pelvic floor muscle is not only because of the delivery, because not only because of the perineal pain that it has been lost, it is also very much interrelated to your posture. In the first picture, if you can see, the sacrum is nicely nutated, or we say that it is flexed. So there is a more of an anterior tilting of the pelvis. Aside from this symmetry over here, so the pelvic floor muscle is extremely lengthened. Alright? And as we know from our first year biomechanics or anatomy, when a muscle is lengthened to a particular level, then the tension that has to be generated by that muscle, the efficiency of that muscle diminishes. Now in the pelvic floor, in this case, the efficiency of the pelvic floor muscle diminishes, so all its functions will diminish. It can be some problem in the support system, some problem with the continence, maybe something with the sexual dysfunctions, or just some kind of back pain which is going to happen because of this, lengthening and weak or tightened and weak. We just don't know. So we have to see the body as a whole. We need to see a person, from top to bottom to actually evaluate it. Okay? Because this core, as I already said, they are all partners. They all will work together. They all will work with synergy or synergistically. If either of them is not working in the right way, other one is going to tighten it, or it is overloaded. In other ways, to put it in a more simpler way, it gets overloaded. It clenches itself because it has to take the brunt. In a postnatal woman, because of the lengthened abdomen, the pelvic floor is also lengthened, the abdomen is also lengthened, and the back muscles are more or less tight, and the diaphragm is not having a nice excursion of the movement. When we talk about the diaphragm, I'll tell you. So it is not necessarily going to be the same for each and every woman. It might be different, but this is just a general overview that this is normally how it happens. Okay, so we need to see to it that the abdomen is trying to gain the right length, the pelvic floor has to regain the normal length, and once these all will start regaining its length and its appropriate tension so that they can function properly. The most important function of your core, if we talk about again biomechanics, is to load the body, right? Is to take off the load in the correct way. Each and every muscle is going to be utilized, especially when we are going to sit to stand, or maybe turn in the bed, or maybe walk. There's a vertical loading that is happening from our head to the spinal column, and it is getting dissipated to the sacroiliac joint and then the hip joints, right? So these are the muscles which are activated right before the movement starts, so that nothing falls apart. Okay, if we talk about the sacroiliac joint, there is something called as form closure and the force closure. Alright, so if you can see this joint, it's a very stable joint. There are lots and lots of ligaments like the posterior longitudinal ligament, the anterior ligament, the interosseous sacroiliac joint ligament, and as I already mentioned, the sacrotuberous, sacrospinous, which is a part of your pelvic floor. Alright, so these are the ligaments which is holding this joint together. If you can see, it's a very zigzag kind of a zigzag pattern wala joint. It's not like a flat surface. It's not like a ball and socket joint. So to maintain the stability, all these muscles, all these ligaments, and their integrity, has to be maintained so that the load transference happens optimally without any dyssynergia in the body or without developing any kind of dysfunction. Dysfunction can happen differently in different individuals, and which is the primary source which is causing the dysfunction is what we need to know as a physiotherapist. Okay, so normally I will not just give you a blanket statement that if there is stress urinary incontinence, go treat pelvic floor muscle. No, look at the body as a whole. Sometimes, in spite of treating the pelvic floor muscle, you might not end up, having the patient recovering or having the patient symptom free. So we have to again use our mind that where is the problem arising from? Is it because of that poor posture? Is it because of she's not utilizing that particular muscle? See the body as a whole. Use your biomechanical skills. Use your entire physiotherapy skills in the musculoskeletal dysfunction, and then treat your patient. All right. So I go further. I hope this makes it a little bit more clear. The second exercise, normally we talk about the anterior tilting of the pelvis in the antenatal women or the postnatal women, that there will be a lot of tilt. But there is also one very common, postural adaptation, especially in the women of this generation. I will tell you the reason why. They tuck their toe, they tuck their bum. Tucking the bum has been, I don't know, it has become a normal response to women because maybe of a poor posture also. Working on the laptop or on the computer or sitting while you're job, you kind of sit on your tailbone rather than sitting on your ischial tuberosities. So when you're tucking the toe in, I mean tucking the bum in, the glutes, a part of the glutes, they just stop working. The part of the glutes which stop working will also cause a very you know there is a lot of effect on the body, and those pelvic floor muscles, because the sacrum is tucked in, as you can see, they are going into a shortened position, and the tension generated will be less over here. Okay, so that is where the problem, that can be the prime generator, maybe of urinary incontinence, maybe of DRAM, we don't know. So we need to find out. So I'm just giving you hypothetical situations. These all things can be there. You have to look for all these things and just not treat like go for Kegels, not that way. Okay. We come to the breathing diaphragm. Again, breathing diaphragm. I mean, one muscle which needs to be paid a lot of attention in pregnancy and postpartum. As we all know that when the baby is going to, grow into the uterus, it comes here, almost at the xiphi at the end of 37 weeks. So your rib cage are nicely, splayed in the body. They go down almost just a little bit above the iliac crest. So when the baby is growing, or your entire digestive contents are shifted up, plus your diaphragm, which is a nice dome-shaped muscle which has to go down and up in a very nice rhythmic pattern, and with, sorry. It has to go up and down. So we have to remember again the biomechanics, that is the bucket handle movement, which is going to increase the lateral diameter. Also the anteroposterior diameter, which has to increase. There has to be some modifications or some changes which will happen in antenatal women. Some of them will have a alignment issue, but they go unnoticed, or there will be no pain. And some of them will have alignment issue and they will have pain or dysfunction. Okay, so body is a very you know very curious machine. It's a very peculiar machine. Sorry, not curious. It's a very peculiar machine because it responds differently in different individuals, right? As the pain. So we need to find out. We'll have a lot of rib pain patients in pregnancy, right? So those rib pain patients, we have to keep that in our mind postnatally when we are seeing them. That there was some alignment issue in the ribs. If we could have treated them in antenatal population, very good. If there was not a scope to treat them in the antenatal population, postnatally we also have to see how is the position of the diaphragm, and again the abdominal muscles, they also start from the rib cage, right? The external and the internal oblique, they have the rhodogen insertions over there. So sometimes because one of the muscles, again the asymmetry comes into picture, one of the muscle is acting very, is overacting or it is firing more, then maybe one side of the rib cage, maybe there might be a little bit of torsion. And in response to that, there might be a little bit of torsion in the sacroiliac joint as well. Sacroiliac joint, or rather I would say the pelvis. So we need to figure out where the torsion is. Again, the uh, primary driver, which is the one which is causing her issue. So when the woman comes with you with an issue, these are again in the later postnatal period, in the hospital-based setup, we just need to evaluate her and maybe give her a good postural advice that will help. So yeah, this is about the breathing diaphragm. Rib cage over the pelvis. Again, coming back to our biomechanics, if you can see in the first picture, it's the rib cage and your pelvis are very nicely stacked on each other. So normally when I teach my postnatal patients how to have a good awareness about the sitting posture or maybe the standing posture, I always ask them that just see to it that this is your rib cage. Hope you can see me. This is your rib cage, and just beneath it is your pelvis. So you need to stack like the blocks. You have to see to it that your rib cage is stacked just above the pelvis, and you have to imagine. You have to give this visual dialogues to them so that they can have a better understanding about their own body. You have to tell them that just imagine that this pelvis is like a bucket filled with water. So like this. If this is a neutral pelvis, the bucket filled with water will remain as it is. The water is not going to dribble down like this, or it is not going to dribble out here. If she has an anterior tilting of the pelvis, the ribcage is right here, but there is an anterior tilting of the pelvis. Obviously, the ribcage will also shift a little bit back. So what happens over here? The water is going to spill out anteriorly. Alright. So you need to show her this, maybe by having a visual pelvis or a diagram or a video presentation, whatever. Or if there is a posterior pelvic disc, then the water is going to spill outside in this way. This is one way. Second thing that we teach her is that you have to imagine that there is a bell ringing from your thorax. Yeah. So this bell, you imagine that there is a line which is just, sorry, I just don't know whether you can see me. There is a bell which is ringing from your rib cage, and that bell should always be in a neutral position. If I just tuck my bum in like this and I go into a posterior pelvic tilt, the bell is ringing forward. And if I go for an interior tilting of the pelvis, obviously the rib cage is going to, and there are a lot of balancing issues for these people, right? So that bell is ringing backward. So I have to tell her that see to it that the bell is ringing. I mean, the bell is not ringing, it has to be neutral. And the pelvis and the rib cage, they have to be stacked on one another. And your femur is just right beneath. Some people go into hyperextension just to maintain that balance, right? To keep that center line of gravity in the base of support. So again, see the body as a whole because it has a lot of impact on your pelvic floor, on your diaphragm, on your rib cage, plus your thorax. Okay, one interesting fact I would like to mention over here is that your abdominal muscles, the nerve supply to the abdominal muscles, they're coming from the thoracic nerves, right? The iliohypogastric nerves. So when your thorax is not in the right alignment, also the neural control to the abdominal muscle might not be correct. Okay. So you have to see to it that your thorax is also having a nice expansion. Thorax, not the thorax, the rib cage, because the rib cage is attached to the thoracic vertebrae, right? So they need to have a nice expansion, the bucket handle and the anteroposterior diameter, the correct breathing pattern. Again, the treatment over here is maybe align it in the right way, plus teach a nice breathing pattern. is very simple. So if I just directly would have said that teach a diaphragmatic breathing pattern or teach her good core breath, it would have sounded very blanket statement to all of you that okay, this is what we know. But why are we doing this is what you need to know. Alright, again, it is not going to be same for everyone. For few of them, we will have to concentrate more on the breathing. For few of them, we'll have to concentrate more on the pelvic floor. We need to concentrate more on the alignment. So again, depending from patient to patient, we have to modify our treatment. I think there is a little understanding on the pelvic floor and the diaphragm. What happens to the diaphragm, as I already said, there can be incorrect breathing patterns, so there can be some wrong nervous system stimulation. It might result into mood of clenching. Your autonomic nervous system is everything associated with the flight and fight situation. So whenever there is pain, the sympathetic nervous system will produce more of stress hormones, more of anxiety or whatever. There will be more tension. And when there is more of tension, the alignment is not going to be correct. So we need to also find out that where is the problem occurring. Incorrect musculature is stimulated. Diaphragm, now by this, I think we all are clear that your diaphragm and your pelvic floor, they work together functionally, and your abs and your back is holding that canister or your cylinder in the right place. How are they working together? I'll just give you brief this thing. When you're going to breathe in, your breathing diaphragm is going to go down, your pelvic diaphragm is going to go down, alright, because the intra-abdominal pressure is rising. So to accommodate the pressure, there has to be some space, right? So it has to actually go down, both of them. The diaphragm has to go down, the breathing one, and the pelvic diaphragm. It has to lengthen. It does not have to contract. If it contracts, just imagine it that way, that if your breathing diaphragm is going down, and if your pelvic diaphragm contracts, so where is the pressure going to go? It is a closed system, right? The pressure has to go somewhere. So the pressure will have to be taken by the abdominal muscles because there is no bony structure over there. And now imagine the structure which is already lengthened, which is already not in the right alignment, which is already weak. If it has to take the pressure, it is not going to help. So incorrect breathing pattern will also not let you heal, will also not let you recover. Alright, so again teaching the breathing in the right manner, just to be a 360-degree breathing pattern. Just do not ask her to grow the abdomen. Breathe in, bulge the abdomen, breathe in, bulge the abdomen. That is not what we are going to concentrate. Because whatever command you will be giving has a lot of impact on the patient's mind, and your brain will only just start following it. So we have to tell that take a 360-degree breathing pattern. You have to explain this mechanism of your pelvic diaphragm and the breathing diaphragm. That this is how it is to lengthen. It has to lengthen. The core breath is a very important protocol that has to be taught. And yeah, I will do that, Suresh. So it has to go down very nicely, and it has to see to it that both of them are lengthening at the same time. So normally I don't use the word Kegels. I use the word that the pelvic floor has to strengthen and lengthen at the same time. Lengthening is equally important with the contraction because with every single breath that you're going to take, when you're going to breathe out, the pelvic floor is automatically going to recoil. And when that recoiling is happening, there is a contraction of the pelvic floor muscle. All right. Okay. So if we club it with the nice pelvic floor contractions, maybe the short contractions and the longer contractions, because there are both the type of muscle fibers in it, it's going to help us. But we need to see whether the pelvic floor is tight, loose, what is the posture, and then breathe accordingly. Okay, so when we have to make an effective use of the diaphragm, then you're going to breathe in. Do not see to it that your patient is not holding the breath. Okay, that is one maneuver clinically which you will come across in many, many women, postpartum or antenatal. Whenever I ask them, okay, let's take a nice deep breath in, what they will do, they will just bring the air up into the chest. They will clench the abdomen, tighten the pelvic floor, which is exactly the opposite to the normal biomechanics. The diaphragm has to go down. The abdomen has to bulge. The posterior part of the lung has to expand. The pelvic floor has to lengthen. All these things will, they have to happen in synchrony so that we get the right, loading. The right mechanics is followed. So you have to see whether she's not drawing in the belly or she is not clenching her pelvic floor or glutes or whatever for that matter. That is what the role of a physiotherapist is. So what will happen if you are drawing the belly in? It will, as I already said, there is a lot of pressure on the abdomen. Pelvic floor will not work efficiently. Diaphragm is not expanding, which is not optimum for the long-term recovery for the body. We already, almost everyone talks about the multifidus, so there is not much to talk about the multifidus and the transverse abdominis. We are all gaga about it. They are the glorified muscles of the core, the back, that is the multifidus, and your abdominal muscles. Yeah, but how to start treating them and how to bring them in an integrated system is what as a therapist you need to do. Okay, now exercises in the postnatal women. How do we go about it? As I already have given you a lot of hypothetical situations, you need to find out that what is going to be the best way of treatment for your woman, for the patient. Definitely, we need to target at the inner core unit, that is the transverse, multifidus, the pelvic diaphragm, and the breathing diaphragm by teaching them the right appropriate way of breathing, correcting her posture, giving her good ergonomic advice, breastfeeding position, and targeting a specific areas of concern, which was my first slide. Again, I put this diagram just to have an idea that how the pelvic floor reacts to the posture. Okay, I'm not discussing this again. How do I treat the? There is one thing I have mentioned. These all problems. There are lots and lots of problems that can happen. There are array of them. Again, if we go back to my first slide, if you could see that there will be other small medical issues also, but they also have a carry forward effect on the woman, because if she is unable to take care of the baby, she will have some kind of anxiety issues or some kind of psychological issues as well, which will reflect on all this. Or if you imagine a woman who is just delivered and she's having extreme perineal pain, then it is not the perineal pain which is causing her discomfort. It will be that she's not able to take care of the child or she's not able to feed the baby, which is her major concern. So we have to first treat the perineal pain and give her alternatives in that sitting area, that how she can, not just put that pressure on that perineum and, maybe give an ultrasound or whatever is in our, possibility, whatever is possible for us. Breast problems, again, lots and lots of them are there, and we are capable of treating them as physiotherapists, especially engorgement. It has to be treated with ultrasound, or you can give them pullbacks. Okay, so depending upon the situation, we can do that. Perineal pain. I'm talking about the perineal pain because this is one of the most, you know, uh, this is going to happen in most of the women, especially if it is a normal vaginal delivery. If it is a C-section, maybe she is not having perineal pain. But if it is a normal vaginal delivery, there can be several factors which is causing pain. But if there is breaking of sutures and infection, we will wait. We will only just give her advice rather than start with any sort of treatment. The important thing, this slide I have kept it over here, is again there are degrees or classification of the degrees of the perineal pain. If there is the anal sphincter tear or anal sphincter has been cut in episiotomy, then she will have fecal incontinence. So we have to treat accordingly. Okay. The important thing in this is again a general thing, that they will in a body in the human body, whenever there is an injury, the body is going to recover by having a scar formation, right? Whenever we have a cut in our body is going to produce some sort of scar over there. So sometimes when we have a scar, when we see after like years after that, we see that the scar has become adherent to that underlying structures in the body. So we need to see that the scar is mobilized, and the same is true with the perineal tear as well. If there is a scar, then we need to see that the scar is mobilized and the same is true with the perineal tear as well. So we need to see that the scar is mobilized and the same is true with the perineal tear as well. So in the perineal scar, just a minute, can you give me just a minute, please? What's the problem with the battery? Can you see me? Purvi?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Yes. There is a problem with my battery. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So coming back to the scar management, we as physiotherapists who are working into women's health, we can teach scar mobility. So I had been working in a private gynec hospital for years. So it takes a little bit of time to explain to your gynec that we are, you know, uh, we can treat these things and these are going to help our patient. So you need to have more of research based evidence with you, so that it just does not go into waste. After learning so many things, you need to put it into practice. Plus we need to have good hands on skill over here. So yeah, so the treatment for perineal pain, it's a very we know about that. You can give her ice, we can give her warm bath, ultrasound, electrotherapeutic therapeutic modalities, that is pulsed electromagnetic therapy, and obviously the pelvic floor muscle exercises. And what I want to teach right now is just scar mobilization. There are slides that I've kept, that what kind of ice, why do we need ice, or why do we use ice, that we all know that why we give ice in any injury patients, the first 48 or first 24 to 48 hours we give ice, right, whenever there is hematoma or bruising. after a fall, after an injury, ice is used. Okay, in a woman also who has had a perineal tear or she's having a perineal pain, ice in the first few hours is going to be useful. There is no much that I have to talk about this. We already know that rest, elevate for good flow. It's like the price principle. So these are the ice packs. There are a lot of products available, and if you research about all these things, there are a lot of things which you'll be getting. What kind of ice cube you have to use, or you have to use crushed ice and multiple things. Okay, then there is another thing which we call as the sits. I'm rushing over here because this is not what I really want to show. I want to show how to mobilize the scar. Okay, so this is the sits bath. Sits bath is again, this is the only picture I could get. So there can be a huge tub, maybe a little bit of warm water, and sometimes in some hospitals they also put the betadine solution. And you have to teach her the hygiene. How does she have to, maintain her hygiene? Always ask her to clean from, आगे से पीछे. All right, so that when she's not from the anus to the vagina, from the vagina to the anus. Okay, if she has to clean. So that is normally taught by the nursing staff in the hospitals, in big hospitals. And yeah, we can also, as a physiotherapy point of view, we can go for ultrasound and this pulse electromagnetic, this shortwave therapy. And there are the parameters that I have mentioned. Again, I'm not going into detail because this is not what I want to show right now. I wanted to show how to do the scar management. In the initial first 2 weeks, the postpartum, it is simple. Go for the price treatment, that is protection, rest, ice application, elevation, maybe bandaging, whatever. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, that is third to sixth week, normally this at this time the patient does not come to us. Even if they are asked to come, they will never come to you. If you are working in an hospital setup and if you have a very good rapport with your gynae, maybe she might give you a cabin and where you might show her the scar massage or something like that. But at least we can expect that the woman comes to you at 6 weeks postpartum, and this is the time we still have time to treat her, because there are few conditions, if they are not treated immediately postpartum, they are going to land up into later postpartum, and then the later postpartum remains lifetime. All right, so in the 6th week, if they are coming, 6th or maybe 8th week for that matter, if they come to you, we need to teach her the scar massage. Because there are some textbooks which mention that you have to do it in the 3rd week, and there are some textbooks they mention that you have to do it in the 6th week. The disclaimer over here is that the wound should be properly closed, it should be properly healed before treating it, before doing any kind of massage over here. You need to have very good hygiene. You need to teach the woman how to go into crook lying position with nice supported pillows, legs a little wide. If it's a normal delivery, she is not going to sit cross-legged for 15 days. So as such, if she's coming to you after a few weeks, then maybe but cross leg is not needed. You go into that crook lying position again with the support of pillow, and you use your thumbs to do a nice scalp massage in different directions. But again, the scar should be healed and the wound should be closed, and you need to maintain strict hygiene and sepsis so that there are no chances of infection. She might have a little restriction, a little bit of pain. So on a pain scale of 0 to 10 on VAS, if she's having a pain of maybe 2, that's fine. But if she's having more pain on doing the mobilizing her scar, stop it. So there are diagrams that I have kept over here. So the first is the up and down stretch. So she's going to use her fingers and do a good perineal massage over here, up and down, up and down. Okay, gentle massage, maybe few strokes. That's it. Side to side mobilization. So side to side, yeah. Then there is a sweep. So we can nice sweeping action over here. This is also taught antenatally abroad, in abroad countries. But over here we don't follow. There is a scar rolling. Scar rolling is opposite, like you driving a car. Yeah. So then what are the issues that can come? Immediate postpartum also, she might be having a little bit of urinary incontinence. Fecal incontinence is not as common as urinary incontinence, but that can be an issue. So these are the issues that she can face immediate postpartum also. Constipation, one of the most commonest issue which might result into hemorrhoids. All right, so constipation, you might think that how as a therapist can I treat constipation? Yeah, we don't treat constipation per se, but obviously because of the lack of abdominal wall support, that pressure that has to be maintained while you are defecating is not happening. So maybe once you give her a binder, or maybe when she's taking a lot of laxatives, or if you teach her a good defecation technique, we might help her in constipation also. Urinary retention, if you teach her the right kind of pelvic floor exercises, it is going to help. It happens because of a prolonged second stage of labor. I'm rushing because this is not our major areas of concern. And there is also one more thing which I wanted to talk about scar. You can also manage the scar into a C-section patient. Okay, just a second. So if you can see, this is a woman this is the uterus. Assume that this is the abdomen and this is just above the perineum and this is the scar. It is called as the bikini scar or the penestrial scar. It is lower in the lower uterine segment. Now the vertical scars are no longer used. And you start where there is least resistance and maybe you just roll it, or maybe you use a keyboard kind of hand placement and then you just give the scar. Wherever there is resistance, just do not push into that resistance a lot, push it away from the resistance. Push it away from the resistance. That is what it is going to help. So we can always go for a scar mobility also in a C-section woman. Okay, now coming back to my pelvic floor. Okay, so awareness of the pelvic floor. How do I, most of the women clinically, as I already told you, will present with a breath hold when we ask them to do a pelvic floor muscle contraction. They will do a Valsalva maneuver because they actually don't know what is a pelvic floor. So this is your role in the antenatal population. You need to teach her that, okay, when you spread out your legs and the muscles just beneath your skin and the perineum. This is called as a perineum. There are 3 openings. Everything you need to explain it to her, and then she will get an awareness about those things. And just beneath them are those pelvic floor muscles. So maybe a handheld mirror, and you have to see that this is the vagina, this is the urethra, and this is the anus. And when you are contracting, what is contracting more? Is it the abs? Is it the glutes? Is it the inner thigh? So this is all things that you need to explain it to her so she gets a little bit more awareness of her floor. And when we ask her that the lengthening of the pelvic floor should happen, she should not do it the other way around. She should not cause the squeezing action. And how do we see the squeeze? When you are squeezing in, those anal sphincters will squeeze in, so the puckered skin will go in, right? So you can also give an analogy of defecation, right? So that when you are, squeezing in those external anal sphincters, it will be the skin goes inwards, something of that sort. So you can explain it to her in that way. Again, my thing that strengthening and lengthening of the pelvic floor is by asking her to take a nice core breathing, the 360-degree breathing pattern. Kegels, if we are teaching, it should be slow and fast contractions both. And slowly we have to go, because if there is a lot of perineal edema, then she might be a little bit of scared. They might feel that the structure, by doing the pelvic floor muscle exercise, they might rupture the sutures and they might have, they might not have that confidence to do it. So you have to bring that reassurance and advise her that that is not going to happen. Most important, the key thing over here is the knack has to be taught to the patient for motor relearning strategies and for the muscle memory. Okay, they don't know, the muscle has forgotten that when we are going to have that intra-abdominal pressure rise, I need to contract the pelvic floor. It has to pre-activate, right? The transverse abdominis and your pelvic floor muscle has to pre-activate, and that pre-activation is not happening. The muscle memory is lost. Why? Because in those entire 9 months, because the length tension relationship has been altered, or because of that poor posture assumption, some muscles are overfiring, some are underactive, some are tight, some are loose, some are weak, some are maybe just not in the right position. So we have to teach them those strategies so that the optimal functioning happens. Other exercise, simple. You can start with any 4 exercises if you feel that this is the right time to start. Ambulation, maybe 10-15 minutes of ambulation she can start postnatally. All circulatory exercises, I think this is not what I'm supposed to say. This is ankle toe movement, slow and rapid pumps for the circulation. So if she's having varicosities, treat her varicosities. If she's having De Quervain syndrome, treat her De Quervain syndrome. So whatever musculoskeletal dysfunction she is presenting postnatally, treat her as a whole. Just don't see the pelvic floor. So these are the dysfunctions that can happen. Pelvic girdle pain, one of the most commonest dysfunctions antenatally and postnatally. The pelvic girdle pain has been classified with SI joint pains and the pubic symphysis, as I already mentioned. There can be lumbar, that is the low back pain. There can be thoracic pain. Coccydynia is a very common pain. And of course, your cervical pain. Cervical pain normally happens again because of poor feeding postures or because of a prolonged second stage of labor where her neck is unsupported. If we know a little bit of labor, we know that when we are going to push that baby out, we are going to come back like this. And if your neck is not supported, you might strain your neck. And yes, the diastasis recti. It's a huge topic. I'm just going to give you a bit of it. That's it. Why do we have musculoskeletal pain and dysfunction during pregnancy? I think I have had a lot of discussion about this in our previous slide. Hormonal changes, poor posture, not good loading, unsupported second stage of labor, poor feeding postures, poor ergonomics. So if you can see, we can always teach her the good feeding posture. We can teach her good ergonomic positions, maybe good advice. In the second stage of labor, give her, put in that position so that she does not have to strain her back. Hormonal changes, we cannot do much about it. And if there are other factors associated with it, we have to treat them accordingly. Yeah, again, with any joint or musculoskeletal dysfunction, we go for hot packs, cold packs, depending upon the injury. We go for our electrotherapeutic modalities like ultrasound, IFT, laser, whatever is available with you. If you are an electrotherapy person, if you feel that that is going to help break the pain cycle, and psychologically it also has a lot of effect on the patient that something is being done, then definitely we can go for these electrotherapeutic modalities. Start with static exercises and then start loading in an appropriate starting position. Yeah. So this is what the textbook says. Let's start with static exercises. Okay. But again, this is very patient to patient driven. If your patient is having a good form closure, but she's having problem with her mobility, then you can straight away start with mobility exercises. All right. And yeah, you have to work accordingly. Follow the ABC pattern of treatment. ABC, A is the alignment, B is the biomechanics, and C is the control. Control, that is a neural control. So everywhere, if you follow this pattern, and if you know what is the prime problem, prime source of the problem, and which is going to cause the maximum benefit into her functional activities, that is the area where you need to start the treatment from. If you see a postpartum woman, especially in the later stages. Okay, if there is a lumbar, thoracic, cervical, SI joint, then mobilize it. If you have all, we as physiotherapists, we have lots and lots of skills to mobilize our joints, right? So thoracic mobility, you can use a Mulligan technique if she can do it in that, maybe in the later postpartum period. In the initial postpartum period, little gentle mobilizations will be helping her. Gentle mobilizations in the SI joint, which is not going to hamper her recovery. Definitely, we can go for that. And you can also give her belt if stability is an issue. So then we talk about the pubic symphysis dysfunction. I'll talk more about this belt. For the thoracic pain, again, you can mobilize. You can always advise her to wear a well-supported brassiere. That's a bra. All right, so that the growing size of her breast, of her chest, is not going to cause that increased thoracic kyphosis. Again, that is just not it. As I already mentioned in the biomechanic part, that when the thorax is not in the right alignment, what happens is it might also cause, because the thorax is sitting on the pelvis, right? There might be a little bit of torsional movements or tilting movements into the pelvis also. Second thing, your thorax has the nerves. They are the thoracic nerves which are supplying to the abdominal wall, so the neural control might be disturbed, and your rib cage does not have the right movement patterns, so abnormal breathing pattern, and the area of symptoms that happen. So again, primary driving source has to be found out. The most debilitating condition that is postpartum that I have seen, and which is there with most of the women, I mean, not everyone will have it, is the pubic symphysis pain or the diastasis. When the diastasis means separation, it is excruciating pain. Imagine a pelvis is just separated from the pubis. There is no connection between the pelvis. There is going to be no load transfer. There is no, the woman is just unable to move in the bed, and there will be excruciating pain, and physiotherapy helps. So what we are going to do, manage pain, because pain is going to be मतलब इतना ज़्यादा होता है कि वो मतलब forget the baby. There is nothing on her mind, but she wants that her pelvis comes back to her. We have seen like 10 centimeters of separation in my career. So you need to immobilize the patient, because if you start mobilizing a patient with pubic symphysis pain, she is just going to scream and yell at you, because there is, though as I already mentioned, that the loading that happens from the spine to the SI joint to the pubic symphysis to the hip joint, that is not happening. There is no connection. It has been lost. So definitely she will be in lots and lots of pain. So immobilize your patient, teach her mobility transfers. How do we immobilize the patient? By giving her a nice intertrochanteric belt. There is also something called a Serola belt. If I'm not mistaken with the name, I will still check and let you know. We can use assistive devices. Assistive devices, maybe a crutch or a walker, might be utilized for these kind of patients, because she has to put the load onto something else. She has to use her hands to load onto the crutches or the walker. And then you need to teach her the ambulation, because at least once she's going back home, and that is going to continue for 6 to 8 weeks for the pelvis to come back to the neutral position. So intertrochanteric belts are used over here. And if she's having coccydynia, again, why does this happen? That is because maybe it is an obstetric traumatic injury when the baby is passing through the birth canal. The coccyx, if it is in, it's not in the right shape, or just if the baby's head is too big, it might, just rupture the ligaments, or it might result into fracture of the previously ankylosed joint of the coccyx. They are all fused, right? So anything might have happened, might have had happened, we don't know. So depending upon what will be her clinical findings over here, you will be seeing that she'll be having extreme pain while sitting on the tailbone, right? Because that is where she's weight bearing. And while changing her position from sit to stand, maybe sometimes pain in walking as well, and also pain in defecation. So these are defecation and coughing, right? These are the basic functional activities that a woman is going to do. We cannot ask her not to go and defecate. So if there is something which is as bad as pain on defecation, we need to treat that. We need to treat the pain first, brain the pain cycle, and see whatever that we can do, which is जो हमारे हाथ में हो सकता है, with medical evidence, of course. We can give her a coccygeal cushion, lumbar roll, so that she gets a good, nice posture. She's not loading on the coccyx, which is injured, at least for a few weeks. Then we can give her a postural advice, not ask her not to slouch and sit, because if she's slouching and sitting, that is always going to remain like this. So it's like the posterior pelvic tilt. Ice and hot packs works wonders over here. Electrotherapeutically, you can go for ultrasound, you can go for TENS. Pelvic floor exercises, they really help because it's bringing the alignment, and it is also that pumping action of the pelvic floor muscle. You are strengthening the pelvic floor, right? So that is also connected to the coccyx. It is going to help the joint to heal. Static glutes, they also help us. Demonstrate comfortable positions of resting. Sitting is going to be difficult, so you have to demonstrate that you can do it in, maybe feed her inside, ask her to feed in sideline, or when she herself is feeding, ask her to make use of that pillow. Maybe you can modify. So this is how the cushion looks. Last but not the least, the dram. This is a very, very commonly talked topic now. Everyone everywhere in the world is talking about dram, but it is just a part of your core. It is just not to be glorified, but yes, it's dram. The thing that we talk about dram a lot these days is that every antenatal woman, 100% of them will have a dram. 100% of them. If she has crossed her 35 weeks of a pregnancy, she is going to have a dram. All right. And in few women, they kind of heal on its own, but in few, if it is not treated, it remains forever. That is what we call as a later postpartum issue. As the abdominal wall is a part of your core, right? It is taking the load. If that muscle is not coming back to its position, obviously some or the other one has to take the brunt. So either the back will have to take the brunt, your pelvic floor, or your diaphragm. So that is why we need to treat this condition. We need to make the patient aware that there is something called a separation of the midline, which is going to happen, which might happen. Don't scare her, but at least tell her that this is what it is going to happen, or this is how the picture is like. And if you can see there are different types of presentations of diastasis. Okay, so first is an open diastasis, second is just below the umbilicus, third is above the umbilicus, and the fourth one is a completely open from top to bottom. And एकदम ऊपर वाला picture, the top picture is a closed diastasis. That is, two finger separation is considered to be normal. There are different n number of researchers researching on this topic. Some say it is 1.7 centimeters, some say it is 1.8, and some to be like just across this thing, it is 2 centimeters. You used to, if you are a very research oriented person, use a measuring tape. And we have to measure it at 3 levels, that is at the umbilicus, above the umbilicus, and just below the umbilicus. 2 centimeter above, 2 centimeters below, and document it if you are your therapist. Treating a woman postnatally, if she's leaving from the hospital, you need to document whether dram is there at which level and how much is the dram. So when she comes back to you after a few weeks, we need to again check it, and she needs to do all the exercises to bring that closure. Sorry. Yeah. How to check it? Yeah, so this is a self-check method. If you can see that the woman is putting her hands horizontally at the level of the navel, she is in a crook line position, and we ask her to breathe out and just lift her head up. Just lift her head up. Okay, so you will feel there is, if you can do it for your own self also after the webinar is over. Normally, if you have no separation, you will feel tension in that just beneath your fingers. This is suppose my abdomen and I'm poking my fingers into it at the level of the umbilicus. You will feel good tension and your fingers will not scoop into the abdomen. You will feel that there is something which is resisting from it to scoop it inside. All right. So that means that the wall is, the recti are coming together and the linea alba is intact. When you have a DRAM patient, the size and the shape of the umbilicus might be distorted. That is one presentation. Second thing is, when you are doing this, there is a very dovey kind of a look. I have a picture over here if I can show it to you. Yeah, so this is the dovey appearance. Dovey matlab aate jaisa appearance hota hai pet ka. So forget the stretch marks. It's a very dovey appearance. Dovey, and it is very loose, not the fat. We are talking about the muscle. It's not the fat. It is not the flabby abdomen that we're talking about. But if you put your hands inside, you will literally see. Sometimes there is no umbilicus at all. It will be a slit-shaped umbilicus. I don't have the pictures right now. We have patients who have big DRAM. And so, yeah, you need to feel the consistency, you need to feel the tension, you need to feel the separation, that is the amount of separation at different levels. And very, very important that you need to feel is whether is she bulging at the umbilicus or not, or above or below. Is there doming of the belly when she's trying to get up into that crunch position? And if that is the case, then we really, really have to see to her that this does not happen and what else can be done for it. As I already said, we have to check at three different levels. That is called as the interrecti distance, IRD. And there is one, I don't know, I just mentioned one treatment protocol. I just suggest that it is not the right thing to do. Basically, you have to see the patient, again see the patient as a whole, again see that her breathing pattern, her pelvis, her back, in the entire body is in the correct alignment, then check the biomechanics and then treat the driving source. Just do not treat the DRAM. It does not help. Okay. One very, very important test that we do for a woman postpartum that they come later on, especially at 6 weeks, is the active SLR. Active SLR gives us a very nice and it's a very, what do you say, accurate finding. So when she is asked to raise her leg actively with her hip and the knee in extended position, ankle in a neutral position, then if there will be some variation in either of the legs, she will be finding it difficult in one leg and easier in one leg. So you have to see accordingly, maybe just give a closure with your hand, splint the abs into the splinted, and then ask her to go for an SLR, active SLR, and you might see a change. So if that is happening, we have to assume that it is that abdomen which is the driving source, which is not helping her to load it. All right, but after closing the DRAM, still if her ASLR is not improving, then we have to think of the sacroiliac joint. After closing the sacroiliac joint, if still the ASLR is not happening correctly or she's still finding difficult, then check the alignments, maybe check the thorax and multiple other areas. So ASLR is a very, very accurate test to check the load on the spine. You can just search more on it, but I really like the ASLR technique, so I normally follow that. Later postpartum, the first line after 6 weeks is later postpartum, and then till, and then I've kept a question mark. I have deliberately kept a question mark over here because we don't know how long is the woman going to present her postnatal problems. There will be people who will be having DRAM even at the age of 50. There will be people who will also be having stress urinary incontinence, which will worsen once she has entered into her menopausal age. But it started right from the postnatal period or in her pregnancy. So there is nothing like till. It can be endless. It can be till the end of her life. So it is a huge thing that continence is one problem, which is every woman should be continent, right? That is what is a functional thing. Every person they deserve to be a continent person, and there is treatment available for it. So I would like to just give my example. I mean, not my example, my patient's example over here is that when they come to me postnatally, they normally talk about weight loss. Then when you dig into a little bit, further questionnaires with them, that what about your, do you leak while you are, maybe having a cough or a sneeze? or when you have to do a sudden jump or sudden there is an urgent content. When you ask questions like, yeah, that happens, but that is normal. So the mindset over here of your patient has to be changed, and you are the one who is going to change the mindset. By how? By giving her that these are all treatable conditions, and you have to see a physiotherapist. And they are best managed conservatively. There is a very very high incidence that if we treat them in the postpartum period, in that immediate postpartum period, or the 6 weeks postpartum, then they might not end up into having it for a lifelong problem. All right. So this is your area of concern, and you are specialized in it. You are more skilled in it, and you need to treat it. One thing that I want to put it over here is that if your patient is coming with no problems, that she's not having SUI or any kind of incontinence, no sexual dysfunction, DRAM is also okay, and everything is perfect, and you want to start with a fitness regime, always check her status of calcium and vitamin D. Okay, very important. Why? Because many of the postpartum women, in spite of having a good nutritional intake, they might be in that low vitamin D or low the insufficient calcium and insufficient vitamin B3. That is because of the pregnancy. Okay, and they might be having osteopenia, and there is a very high risk of stress fractures or stress injuries. So we do not want to end up, giving your patient stress fractures who is coming for weight loss. What are the common later postnatal problems? As I already mentioned, the stress urinary incontinence, because that's a function of your pelvic floor. DRAM. It's not always necessarily SUI. It can be mixed or it can be urge incontinence. Pelvic organ prolapse, because again that is a function of your pelvic floor. Sexual dysfunction, yeah, dyspareunia. These are the commonest, and there can be other multiple ones as well. But these are the ones which we normally deal with, which normally people do not talk to you. Yes, I think I have done. This is it. And thank you all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we are
Yes.
open to questions. So participants, if you have any doubts, you can message in the text box. Kindly enter your questions in the text box. Ma'am, participants want you to just tell something about the reference books of this topic. Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am? Khushbu ma'am? We'll wait for a minute.
Purvi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Sorry, I just got disconnected from my mobile. That is why.
Yeah, ma'am, no issues, ma'am. Ma'am, kindly give us the reference book for this topic. Students want to know the reference
Yeah,
book.
yeah. I would like to say that there is not as such one book that I refer. I have a lot of research papers and a lot of journals that I refer, and I keep myself updated. And we also do a lot of, me and my team, a lot of international workshops also we are doing along with, So the normal textbooks that which I had referred long back, that is, I had 10 years I have passed out. Post graduation was Absford, and there was one more textbook I forgot. Holden, yeah, but they are very very basic textbooks. But yeah, you can refer them. They are good textbooks.
Okay, any other questions? Ma'am, there is one question. Kindly explain once again the biomechanics of lying to sitting and sitting to lying.
Okay, 1 minute. I will start the video so it will be easy. Should I stop presenting? I think that will be fine. Can you see me, all of you?
No, ma'am. We
No,
cannot see you. We can hear you properly, but we can't see you.
it's difficult to explain it to you without showing it to you. I can see myself though. I think people can say yes, they can see me. Fine. I think Purvi.
Yes, ma'am, you can continue. Yes, I might have some network issues, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay, I will try 1 minute to show it on my bed. So, assuming that I am a post CS patient, I am into the sitting position right now, and I have to teach my patient to lie down. So I ask her to put a pillow between the knees. I squeeze the pillow between the knees. I slowly go down, use my hand, and with all the pressure on my hand, I gently just lift my both legs up. Okay, squeezing the pillow between the knees. Okay, and slowly use my hand and go down into the sideline position. If I have to turn again, I squeeze the pillow and I log roll. I log roll like this. Okay. So the important thing is I don't do this and then my upper body. It has to go as a constant roll. If I have to come into the sideline, I will again squeeze that pillow between my knees. I put my hand over here, come into sideline as a whole. And if I have to get up from this position, I use my 1 minute. I use my bottom hand. I use my bottom hand's elbow and I use my top hand's palm to put pressure. And at the same time, I will start bringing my legs down, squeezing the pillow between the legs. Yeah. So this is how. So this is not a very. This is not a hospital bed. The hospital bed is a little more stiffer. All right. So you don't scoop into the bed. Yeah. So this is how we go about it. Yes.
Yeah, thank
Anything
you,
else?
ma'am. Any other questions? What is the importance of log rolling and keeping the pillow in between the legs?
Okay. As we have already explained to you about the form closure and the force closure of the SI joint. So, for example, if you have seen antenatal patients, you might know this. They don't have a good closure of the SI joint. I'll get my pelvis and I'll show you. Your pelvis is made up of two SI joints and the pubic symphysis, right? The entire thing that I explained it to you in the last 1 hour is that there might be some, ligament laxity, or there might be some alteration in the biomechanics over here. So when you ask her to roll one by one, they might actually be having some SI joint dysfunction, or the closure is not happening. The closure is maintained by your pelvic floor, by your multifidus, and by your abdominals. Everything is needed to keep this pelvis in its position. When these muscles are not in the right state, maybe because of the pregnancy or maybe because of the delivery, then this closure is not maintained. So when we do a static adductors, we automatically give a little bit more compression to the SI joint so that it does not go that 1 mm here or there. Okay, for the initial few days. Once the patient is comfortable, once the muscle has started regaining the strength and the optimal length, then we can ask her to get up and get in and out in the normal way. Plus, if it is a C-section, your abdomen is cut in the lower part. So when you ask her to get up, they will have this protective flexed posture. If you see a post CS patient, it takes time for them to get up. If you have ever been in wards in the IPD, if you are seeing a postnatal patient, they will always be in this, they kind of go into this protective posture because they feel that the stitches will rupture or there's lots and lots of pain. So normally the splinted coughing is also taught in the forward flex posture. But we don't want them to be like that forever. So we ask them that whenever they have to get out of the bed, turn to the bed, maybe go for a splinted, pillow, press the pillow and maybe get up so that the suture line is not, putting a lot of tension over there because the abdominal wall has been cut, and you turn to one side. Again, you do not get up straight because these are the muscles which are cut. And when you log roll together, you're also using a lot of other muscles, just not the abdominal muscles. And when you're getting up also, when they will get up like this. They will literally get up like this very slowly, and then they are like this. From this position to a proper standing position, they will take maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds because the abdomen is cut, right? especially in C-section. If it is a normal vaginal delivery, walking and turning is very easier. But if they are having associated SI joint dysfunction, log rolling is going to really help.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
I think I
Thank you,
have answered
ma'am.
the question.
Yeah, ma'am. Yes, we will publish our webinar on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think we have covered everything, ma'am, and your webinar was self-explanatory. So,
I hope so.
uh,
I hope so they get an idea of what I was trying to say.
yes, hope there are no doubts.
Okay. Then I think
Okay,
it's time
ma'am.
to end up then.
Yeah, ma'am, thank you so much, ma'am. That was really a very nice and informative session. I
Hmm.
thank ma'am on behalf of the whole BITS Institute of Physiotherapy for sharing with us an explicit and insightful knowledge in the field of women's health in postpartum period. That was very nice session, truly, ma'am.
Thank
Uh,
you so much, Purvi.
on behalf of the whole BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, I thank our founder, president, and chairman, Honorable Shri Jagdishbhai Patel, sir, and our CMD, Honorable Shri Dhruvbhai Patel, sir, and joint managing trustee, Srimati Kamalben Patel, ma'am, for supporting us to organize the whole session. I extend my gratitude to our campus director, Ms. Hardi Patel, ma'am. I thank Dr. Mehul Jadhav, sir, Principal, BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, for giving us a free hand to arrange this informative session. I also thank Dr. Sarfraz Nawaz Shah, sir, Vice Principal, BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, for helping us organize and preside the whole session so smoothly. My special thanks to Dr. Avni ma'am, HOD Computer Department, for her technical support in this webinar. My special thanks to Gade Dada, our graphic designer, for his great creative work in making the flyer. My sincere thanks to all the faculty members for their direct and indirect support throughout the session. Last but not the least, I thank and appreciate such a great enthusiastic participation in this webinar. Once again, thanks to all of you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here today with us.
Thank you, Purvi. Thank you so much. Nice for calling me.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yes. So, Purvi, I can leave.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you can leave, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.